Welcome to 1991 Movie Rewind, a podcast where we watch and review every movie released in 1991. From the all-time greatest classics to the critically panned and everything in between. We will rediscover forgotten fan favorites and uncover hidden gems as we explore the depths of direct-to-video. Join us in our celebration of the fun, unique, and diverse films of this highly underrated year. This week, we watched Europa.
Nikki.
And this is John, and thank you for joining us on 1991 Movie Rewind. Europa tells the story of American Leopold Kessler, who has moved to Germany in 1945. His uncle has gotten him a job working as a train conductor. Shortly after starting his position, he meets and becomes entangled with Kate, the daughter of the train company's owner. The train tracks may be straight, but Leo's course through post-World War II Germany is not. Screenplay by Lars von Trier and Niels Vørsel, directed by Lars von Trier, and exhibited at the Cannes Film Festival on May 12, 1991. Have you seen Europa before?
No, I haven't.
Have you seen Zentropa, as it was released originally in the U.S.? So yeah, this movie was originally released as Zentropa, but we now know it as Europa. The reason for that, I don't know if you saw, was because there was a 1990 movie called Europa,
mm-hmm.
and they didn't want to cause any sort of confusion or, assumption that they're connected in some way.
Yeah.
So Zentropa is actually the name of the train, or the train company, that's central to the plot of this movie. I had not seen it before either. I've seen very little Lars von Trier stuff. I saw Dancer in the Dark in college, and that's probably it.
Oh, really?
It's probably it.
I've seen a couple others. It's just they're all depressing, and that's why I don't go out of my way to watch these movies.
Right, they're supposed to be,
they're just they're good but depressing, or just very disturbing.
Yeah, you have to have a certain mindset.
Yeah, I have to be in a certain mood to watch these movies, and 90% of the time I'm not in the mood.
Mm-hmm.
Dancer in the Dark was really good. I love that movie, but I could never watch it again. And that's it. I mean, this movie did not depress me, though.
No.
But I know he does these trilogies, which I know this was part of one of his trilogies that he did.
Yeah, which we didn't watch either of the other two.
Yeah.
Basically, they're not really trilogies in terms of
just
plot and people. It's more thematical trilogies is what he tries to do. So Element of Crime and Epidemic were the first two, which he produced, and Niels Vørsel wrote both of those as well. So we don't really have anything to compare it to in terms of that, but yeah, I would agree, this isn't incredibly depressing. Maybe it's because it is a period piece, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it was during, at the end of World War II, so that was a depressing time.
Especially for Germany.
The subject matter in that is depressing, but this movie didn't make me feel depressed.
Yeah, I didn't really have a lot of attachment to
this was
character.
An educational movie or something. I don't know.
I guess you could say it that way. Yeah. But yeah, so even I didn't really have any sort of attachment to Leo Kessler, even though as Americans, we're probably supposed to see ourselves in him to a degree.
Yeah.
And also the fact that they throw the narration at you from the start, that basically, I guess it's told in second person is I'm not really 100% sure on first, second, third person perspectives, but basically the narrator is telling us that we are the lead character, right? So when he's narrating, he's saying, you are now going to go through this thing.
Mm-hmm.
You have now entered this party. And he's talking about Leo, but it's a narrator. So Leo doesn't hear it, we hear it. So
yeah.
But even with all of that, or maybe because the narrator is present and, obviously telling us that we're part of this story by being there, that maybe that sort of takes the connection out. I don't know. But the narration is very hypnotic in style.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately the movie does sort of like put me sort of in a trance, because you're like, the very first shot is looking down, you're on a train, you see the tracks in basically illuminated by like a headlight, because you have pitch black in like the upper third corner or upper third part of the screen. And yeah, Max von Sydow is just counting from 1 to 10, saying you're going to fall deeper and deeper into Europa as you go through. And yeah, it's meant to be like hypnotic, and you have like this weird visual. And it really sets the tone in terms of what you're going to see in the black and white portions of this. And then as he counted higher, the camera moved more and more out of focus, getting closer to the track, and then it just sort of faded into the actual thing. And that's when we get our first little bit of color as well.
Yeah.
So the movie has a mix of color and black and white. It's primarily black and white, but the color is used there to accentuate things. Probably the most common example I could probably give would be Schindler's List, where you have like the one girl in the red. But this is much more frequent.
I was trying to find ways. Like, I thought there would have been a theme. Like, is he trying to...
Yeah, why was the color used?
Yeah, why was the color? But I was trying to find that out, and I couldn't find a reason.
Do you have any thoughts, even though you couldn't find an answer online, as to what you think
it was?
It was
mostly
like theories, but
during
really
like
hold.
Emotional parts.
Yeah.
So it was like some sort of... It was mostly like when he was feeling some sort of emotion. Or even not even him, because it's like... We should do like a trigger warning, because there is like... Well, I mean, the subject matter of this movie is
yes.
like a trigger warning about World War II and, like the pro-Nazi movement. But then also, like, when the father is in the bathroom
right,
cutting himself, that was an emotional scene.
Yeah.
And that was in color.
That was the most color that they had.
So it was like during, emotional scenes, I guess. But it was mostly like between him and Kate.
Right.
When they saw, like the first time they saw each other, like when he first looked at her, she was in color. But
she was in color, but he was in black and white.
And he was, but when she looked at him, he was like in color, and she was in black and white.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out something. I think you're on the right track with that. But yeah, everything that I came up with doesn't fully hold. Like I thought maybe it was to represent when they're like the most vulnerable emotionally.
Okay.
Or when their guard is, down the most, or just acting on like pure instinct. Right, so like he's cutting himself and like the blood is just there, and like when they're rushing to him in the bathroom, they're not thinking, they're just acting. So like that's when they're at their most pure, maybe. I don't know. So I don't know. That's the best thing I could think of. But there were definitely other times in the movie where, if that were the case, then color would be used in other sequences too. And also, we're kind of jumping around the plot, but like when the father, Max, had to do the test. The test itself was in color, but he was in black and white. So that kind of like threw my theory out the water, out the window there too.
I don't know. It was because he was nervous or something, but I don't know why the test itself was.
So I didn't know, like, was that supposed to mean like truth? But obviously the test turned out to not be true either. So like, I don't know. I couldn't really think of a reason. I'm sure dozens of like honors.
There's like bloggers. I don't know.
Like dozens of honors
theorists
university papers have been written about this, but we couldn't figure it out. If you have your theories, let us know. But it really acts as a nice visual dynamic, even though it doesn't really need it. I also thought that maybe the color was just another way to sort of separate or distract you from some of the other movie making techniques that he was using in this.
Okay.
Because they use rear projection a lot in this movie. So these days you probably see a lot of green screen type of effects where, you know, you have somebody in front of a green screen and then you use a computer in post-production to change the scene. In these cases, it's rear projection, which was much more common in like the 30s or so. Like you can King Kong, the original King Kong is a good example of this too. They have a pre-filmed thing that they're actually showing on a screen behind them, and they're acting to it. So they're not acting to blankness, they're actually acting towards something that has been previously done, and they're interacting with it in certain times. So you can have like a character who was filmed previously, and then the character in the foreground in color reacting to the black and white footage behind them. So that could be part of it as well. It's just like a way to separate that and try to maybe make it a little bit less noticeable, because I noticed that the color shots were a lot grainier than the pure black and white footage.
Yeah, I don't know if that was meant to be on purpose.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know if the color footage was actually shot on color film.
Because it kind of was like Wizard of Oz, you know, when everything turns into color, like how that type of color.
Yeah, or like a Ted Turner colorization type of a thing, where it's all done after the fact. It does have this weird, like, uncanny valley feeling because the colors aren't exact, because someone's basically just interpreting it based off of the shades of gray. So maybe that's part of what's happening here, too. Obviously, we don't have the Criterion DVD, and we did not watch the director's commentary, so maybe Lars von Trier addressed all of this in some of that, but I don't know, it was interesting to watch from that perspective. Yeah, so visually the movie is absolutely stunning and hypnotic in that way. I found myself just locked on the screen just to see what would be done visually next. Which I also think is kind of weird that it came from Lars von Trier in that way, that there was like so much thought and planning that had to go into making this movie, and it's coming from the guy who helped form Dogma 95. Like, do you know anything about that film movement at all?
No.
Okay, so that's something that came about around 1995. Lars von Trier and a couple other filmmakers basically created like a set of rules that said, you know, here's like a new way of filmmaking. And it's basically like handheld cameras, usually digital video. You can only use the lighting that exists at the locations. Everything has to be at location, no set. You know, all natural lighting. You know, you can't bring props. You have to use whatever's there. You know, all kinds of different tenets of basically is like run and gun filmmaking. To sort of set themselves apart from like a studio type of system.
Okay.
So it's like this guy who created this intricate, very meticulously detailed movie is now going off and basically just making the precursor to somebody making a movie on their iPhone.
Yeah.
You know? So it's just weird that that's the same person to me. But anyway, if anyone out there has seen the movie The Idiots from Lars von Trier, that was his Dogma 95 movie. Julian Donkey Boy was one of them.
Okay.
Lovers, who was directed by Jean-Marc Barr, who played Leopold Kessler. That was also another one. So there's only a few that were officially given the title of Dogma 95, but it has like a, you know, a creed that you can look up out there. So anyway, visually it's stunning. Story-wise,
I was confused a lot.
Was it the timeline? I mean, everything progressed in a normal timeline. They didn't jump back and forth, but
Yeah, but
what was it that confused you most?
I think I just didn't know how many, I don't want to say timeline, but just things fast forward too much. And I was like, how far off are we? Because I know there were points where, the narrator was like, now we fast forward a month to Christmas.
Yeah.
But, I mean, how much more time has passed after or before that?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Or when, Kate asked him to marry her, and then they automatically, she's like, will you marry me? Or she said, she doesn't even say, will you marry? She's just like, let's get married. And then they're like, okay. And then it turns around, they're in front of like a pastor or whoever.
Yeah, all
and
in
they're
the same
getting
shot. Yep.
all within seconds. So I was like, how long did that, I know that's supposed to be like visually great and stuff, but I was like, did it happen the next day, or like how long are we talking here? Like years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sort of touches on different topics of post-war Germany without getting into too much detail on any specific one. And it, at the same time, is also trying to progress this story of Leo as the conductor of the sleeping car.
Yeah.
And when we say conductor, the American definition is much different than what they're talking about here. He's basically like an usher or an attendant.
Like a bellhop, but for the train, the sleeper trains.
He's a service member. He's shining the shoes. He's getting people new sheets or drinks or whatever. Like he's there as like the attendant for that specific car of the train. And his uncle is as well. He typically gets drunk and passes out in the little kitchen area and berates Leo on his lack of professionalism. So there's this whole through line of him trying to get this job and then take a test in a few months to get a promotion that doesn't serve much purpose at all, except to create sort of a madcap scenario near the end where you have the other plot line of the werewolves, which we haven't talked about yet at all, mixing with his relationship with Colonel Harris, the American, who is, retained in Germany to do cleanup work or whatever it is. And then the test is happening at the same time. So you have like these three different things, and it's like that scene in Bugsy, where
he's making a cake. But
where he's making a cake and has to talk to the mob boss and whatever. Get on the phone. It's like that, except not meant to be funny at all.
No, he's like descending into madness.
Yeah. I just felt like there's probably too much time spent on his professional job. Like I didn't need to see as much as I did. I don't know. It didn't go anywhere. I wish they would have spent a little bit more time on the actual war stuff. So yeah, like I said in the summary paragraph, he gets the job through his uncle on the train, and then like immediately he meets Catherine Hartman, who is the daughter of the owner of Zentropa, and they form a relationship or a bond immediately, and he's invited to the house where he meets Father Max and the brother Larry and this priest who is there all the time.
And like an American...
And then the American Colonel Harris also stops by. So yeah, things just sort of like happen very fast.
Yeah.
In that regard. So they talk, I don't know, they don't talk a whole lot about anything. But like I said, they do kind of like give little hints and jabs. A lot of it is anti-American, which is fine. I don't think it's necessarily pro-Germany either, most of the time. But a lot of the criticisms that they throw at Leo is basically that he, avoided the war purposefully. right? He did not contribute to the U.S. They think it's really weird that he's in Germany trying to make a life for himself here.
Yeah, right after the war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they're criticizing a lot of his choices or thoughts there. And then slowly it seeps in that there's these other group of people called the werewolves, which I'm not very familiar with history to know how real this was. I would assume it's quite real.
It is a real, like, it's a real movement, yeah. Like a pro-Nazi terrorist movement. It developed right after the war.
Yeah, I assume that it would definitely be rooted in reality. So yeah, there's this aspect about the werewolves, and how Max with Zentropa had ties to Nazi Germany because he had to, sort of as a business owner, if he wanted to keep his business running, and he has some guilt about it and whatever. And Larry is like sort of the black sheep who is completely anti everything that the family has done so far, and he's just very counterculture type of a person. And then the priest is there to put a little religious spin on it, I guess.
Yeah.
And to play chess with the Colonel here and there. Colonel Harris exists for future plot reasons, but in terms of like the story here, I guess he's going around and he's going to, there's some sort of a test that they have to give to various different residents to find out if they have Nazi sympathies or histories, because if they do, then the American government or, you know, the Allies could take away their businesses or dismantle whatever in the name of global security, basically. And so Max has to take this test to, you know, this questionnaire to find out what he knew, who he knew, where his allegiances were, and all this kind of other stuff, which would then be verified by a third party. And so there's a lot of struggle about that. Before that test even happens, though, we keep going to the car, the sleeping car. And it's around this time where Leo unexpectedly smuggles a couple kids onto the train who have guns, but he doesn't know that they have guns.
Yeah.
There's this person who comes up to him and says that he's a friend of Kate's, right? Is that what he said?
Right, the older man?
Yeah, the older man.
Yeah.
Siggy is I don't know if they ever said his name, but that's how he's credited.
Oh, okay.
Played by Henning Jensen. He basically says, "Oh, my two nephews, these two kids that I'm escorting have, you know, documents. They're supposed to be on this train. Can you please escort them on, help them out? All their papers are in order." And that turns out a way for them to be basically smuggled onto the train, where they perform an assassination on a newly appointed mayor of one of the towns. Again, shown visually dynamically with rear projection and like shooting the screen rather than the person, and then you see the screen bleeding and all this kind of stuff.
So yeah, the one of the kids is shooting the the mayor, and yeah, that scene was cool. I don't know. I don't want to say it's cool to see someone die, but yeah, the way it was shot was very interesting.
Yeah,
like I was thinking, how many times did that have to be timed correctly?
Right.
For that kid to shoot that gun, and then for, you know, the guy to fall over and bleed, like as if it was, you know, he was getting shot at that moment. Yeah, it's really fascinating the way these things were put together, and you know, there's, you know, color in the foreground and projection in the background, all this kind of stuff is going on. It speaks to, like, okay, so the Americans basically installed this mayor, and now here's these kids who are part of the werewolf movement, who have killed him.
Leo feels incredible guilt about that. He's just staring at the whole scene, saying, "Oh my God, I caused this," because he saw it was the kids that he brought on. And then the narrator comes on again and says, "We're gonna count to 10, and now you're at a party."
Yeah.
Like, the scene transitions again.
These are just like, those are times where I'm confused. I'm like, what happens after that? Like, what do they do with the body? Like, what's going, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean...
But then I'm thinking...
You don't normally get to see that stuff in other movies from the era either. If you're talking about like a 30s or 40s era movie, you're not going to see...
Yeah, I get it. It's just, yeah, the narrator comes on, it's like, when I count to 5, you will now be at a party or whatever. And yeah, that's what's going to happen. But then I'm like, okay, what? But I don't know. Okay, now we're here. So, but I know that's probably meant to be like that.
Oh yeah, it is. I think it's supposed to like show that he's still in this stupor. I don't think a whole lot of time has passed, but it's tough to know for sure.
He doesn't really seem, I don't know, like phased by it or, disturbed or whatever.
I mean, he gets over it at a certain point because he's there with Kate, and Kate's like, "I used to be a werewolf, but I'm not anymore. Will you still like me? Will you still love me? Whatever it is." So that all kind of happens, and then meanwhile, the test is the questionnaire for Max, the dad, is happening as well, like at the same time, and you see all these. Basically, just these two-faced things sort of come together.
Yeah.
So in terms of the test, basically what happens is Max has to lie in order to pass because, yes, he clearly had Nazi ties. His trains took people to the concentration camps because that's what had to happen in order for him to maintain his business, if nothing else, of whether or not he actually sympathized with the Nazi movement or not. He did have a part in it. And then you have a Jewish person who could be there as a third party to approve everything. He does. He says that these lies are correct and that Max housed him during the war. That's all a lie as well. Colonel Harris knows it because he paid for it. Because the transportation aspect is so vital to the success of the American movement that they're going to allow this to happen rather than actually follow the laws that have been set. So a lot of duplicitous nature that's going on. And, you can take the war commentary as you will with that. But Max is very distraught about the whole thing. He hates what just happened. He doesn't like any of it.
Right.
And so he goes into the bathroom and starts cutting himself, as we mentioned earlier. Meanwhile, Catherine and Leo are upstairs in the attic at this, on the model train, basically making love.
Yeah.
Admitting, "Oh, I used to be a werewolf, but now I'm not."
And she's like,
"Will you still like me?
Do you still love me?" Or, like me. And he doesn't really say anything, but they just start...
He starts kissing because he doesn't...
Yeah.
I don't know why he would ever fully care because he certainly doesn't seem to have a side in this, right? He's an American who did not fight in the war.
Yeah, he's very...
And he's clearly going to Germany, which means he doesn't care too much about what, happened on the German side of the war either. At least that's the impression I was getting from him. It's like, he doesn't care enough that the Nazis did what they did. He's just sort of coasting through life and doing whatever.
Yeah, he's kind of aloof.
Yes,
about
very aloof.
Everything.
Yeah. For sure. But yeah, so then they, do it on the model train. While the father slowly dies. And then, the train breaks and everything goes into ruins. Yeah, that was odd. Because she's just like, "I want to show you something." And she pulls the cover of that train. It's all just sort of act as a metaphor. And then also a little bit of foreshadowing since we see the train plunging off the tracks.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing for this episode too. Spoilers. But yeah, that's when the most color happens is when they find the father and all the blood is rushing in the water underneath the door.
Yeah.
And everything. But again, If you guys know why the color is there for sure, then let us know. But we think it has something to do with like emotional state.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it had to do with danger because there's some points where like the emergency brake itself was in color and he was in black and white and he was pulling it. So maybe it was like had to do with like danger. And so even though like you're looking at Kate, she's in color the first time you see
like
him. She's dangerous to him.
But he's also in color sometimes. So is he a danger to someone, her?
Or a danger to himself? I don't know.
Yeah.
So those are the couple things I thought of as like most vulnerable emotional moments, and then also maybe just insinuating danger. But time passes and they eventually marry. I'm kind of skipping over a couple of plot points, but I don't know how much it matters too much. There's a point where they have like a funeral, a legal funeral for the dad, and Leo's pushed through the train cars to show that there are like Holocaust victims who are still, in the train. I'm not sure if that's meant to be sort of like a flashback type of a thing, or if they're being transported away from the concentration camps to safety now. I didn't know. I had no idea.
I was also confused because I was like, are they flashbacking to when that train was used?
Yeah, was that like a way for us
and
Leo to realize, oh, this is what the trains were used for?
That's what I thought what was happening.
Yeah. But there's no real, like, despite the visual way that the movie is presented, there's no, like, fantasy elements like that. Other places, Like, there's nothing in this movie that isn't necessarily real. It's just presented in a different way. So, to sort of create this hallucination, or whatever you would want to call it, of these people in the train would be weird, if that's what it was. Anyway, they're married. The werewolf man, Siggy, who smuggled the kids, he's still in the picture. Threatens Kate. Kills Larry.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we don't really get to know Larry too much in this. He has a couple scenes.
Yeah, he arrived, gave his thoughts, and then that was it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Didn't have a whole lot of screen time. And then Siggy basically says, in order to save Kate, we want you to blow up the Bremen line. Here's some explosives. Plant them at this stop, and then we'll save your wife if you commit this act of terrorism on behalf of the werewolves. And then, of course, the exam is still happening at the same time. Colonel Harris is trying to get information about what he knows about Kate and the werewolves and the dad and everything else and stuff like that. And so,
things are escalating. He's trying to plant this bomb to save his wife, but also pass a test.
Yes. And the test part takes so much screen time.
Yeah, I was
way too much screen time for everything else.
I don't know. If that was going on in my life, I wouldn't even want to take the test.
Yeah, it's at the point where he's like, why can't he just say, I don't care about this promotion?
Yeah,
if he knows he has to save his wife by doing this other thing, and that's what he actually plans to do, then say, forget it. I'll find another job. I need to do this other thing. Sorry. Goodbye. I don't know.
Or what if he just didn't, what if he just stayed as the whatever train conductor?
Yeah, and just didn't get the promotion
and not get a promotion at that.
Yeah, who knows?
I was like, why does this test have to happen exactly at that time?
Because it's supposed to be a surprise exam, right? And they don't know that the train's in danger. He only knows that.
Yeah.
Even Colonel Harris doesn't know that. He's, trying to decide whether or not to tell him, I guess. But yeah, things continue to escalate to the point where he eventually gets a gun and starts shooting through the cabin. He stops the train.
He gets a little...
plants the explosives, then changes his mind.
There's like his mental health is deteriorating in front of our eyes. I don't know.
Yes. So yeah, all kinds of different stuff happens. Don't really want to say everything because I don't fully remember the exact timeline of it all, for one.
It was a lot of back and forth. I mean, he plants the bomb, but then, has to take that test. And then while he was in the middle of planting that bomb, someone took his hat. And then his uncle was like, you have to wear your hat. So then he's wearing like this towel or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he's running around frantically with a towel on his head.
Which is probably supposed to be some sort of symbolism that I don't understand. I have a feeling it has some sort of like, I don't know, connection to like a past military thing that I just don't know. But yeah,
he's like sweating profusely and stuff. Mm-hmm. To the point where the narrator is like, you're gonna pass out at the count of 3.
Yeah.
Like, or you're gonna faint at the count of 3.
So.
And he faints. Yeah.
He faints. But he tries to disable the bomb. Political intrigue happens. It's sort of a tense moment. I think at that point I'm still not following everything as well as I need to be following it for it to be incredibly tense. I'm more focusing on the visual side of things still while all this is happening. Like, I'm watching him like run in front of the rear projection of like the stopwatch, or have the shot of like him, I don't know, in color with other stuff in the back, all the kind of stuff that we've talked about before. It happens throughout the movie, and it's always interesting. But at some point the bridge does blow up, not because of his bomb, but because of someone else's bomb, or someone else setting a bomb, I think is what happened, right? I don't fully know, honestly.
I think, well, after he
we just watched this movie last night.
Yeah,
we still don't remember.
There was just like that last 20 minutes was like that's when everything happened.
It's a whirlwind, yeah.
So after I think he tries to detonate that bomb, or like, try to make sure it doesn't go off, I think his wife and then that Siggy guy are in the car honking alongside the train, like, hey, get off the train because we want to save you too.
Oh, okay.
That's what I thought.
It could be.
I thought that was her, like, honking, like, hey, it's time to get off. I thought it was more like,
hey, you better do this quick.
Oh, well, maybe
either one
both.
could be right. Yeah, either one could be right.
It was like, can you do this now and then, like, jump off so I can save you so we can be together?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. And then, you have that car driving alongside, honking, and then all of a sudden he's taking that test. Mm-hmm. And all these things are just escalating, and that's, he passes out, and then a bomb goes off.
The bridge blows, the train is sinking into the river below, and then the narrator says, on the count of 10 you will be dead. Mm-hmm. And he is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then as his...
It's scary as shit to me. that was probably the most disturbing scene.
Yeah, that was, like in 10 seconds he will die, and then
because he drowns, and that's like a huge personal fear of mine. I hate watching that on film, even. It's like that stuff is just
but then
traumatizing.
Also also after he dies, the narrator is still talking, saying your body will float out of the train car. There's people up above you,
playing in the water. These people have survived while you have died.
Yeah. And then that's the movie ends.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of glossed over some of the other, like, political side of things, but it does touch on themes of, colonization in a sense, like a lot of post-war stuff. Like, even though the battle and the bombings have stopped, there's still fighting that happens, there's still the residual stuff that happens, there's still the evils of war that take other forms, which I think it does touch on, especially like with the American occupation and some of the stuff that they're doing to suit their needs at the detriment to the German people, and all these other kind of things that are going on. That stuff is touched on to a degree, just not very much. Mm-hmm. Or not to, it doesn't beat you over the head with it, which I'm sure is what they wanted, is to, leave it sort of simple like that. But yeah, that's basically how the movie goes. check out the website for the screenshots, because I want you to at least get a sense of what the movie looks like, and I think that might draw some people in, even if you don't care so much about the subject matter. Like, just watch it for the visual and the filmmaking side of things, and you know, I think that's probably where it's going to be most worthwhile.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about like every single scene, but I mean, we talked about the major ones that were the most impactful. I mean, yeah,
we always spoil
we assume that people have seen this or just want to hear us talk about it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough to know. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about the cast and crew. We already talked about Lars Trier to a degree. He was Oscar nominated for Dancer in the Dark, but not for directing. It was a co-nomination for original song they shared with Bjork and Jon. I don't know how to pronounce that. Sjon. Did not win, of course. He won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival for Dancer in the Dark. Mm-hmm. And he was nominated for several other films, including this one, Breaking the Waves, The Idiots, Dogville, Manderley, Antichrist, and Melancholia. You've probably heard of some of those.
I don't know, Antichrist.
I never saw it. That's his attempt at horror, from what I know. That's all I know about.
He has a most recent one that's supposed to be another attempt at horror about a serial killer that's supposed to be really disturbing.
Okay.
Called The House That Jack Built.
That tracks. That'd be disturbing.
I just heard a lot about it, and then it made me want to see it, but I am also scared to see it.
Well, you never know.
Yeah.
But he's always an interesting filmmaker, if nothing else. Jean-Marc Barr, who played Leo, I mentioned that he was the director of The Lovers, or I'm sorry, I think it's just called Lovers, which is a Dogman 95 movie. He was also in a couple other Lars von Trier movies. He's in The Big Blue and Big Sur beyond that. Probably the biggest star out of this, at least at the time, was probably Barbara Sukawa, who played Kate. At least in Europe, she was probably the biggest star. She had been in Lola and Rosa Luxemburg, where she won the Best Actress award at Cannes. She's gone on to do Hannah Arendt as the lead role. She'd been in stuff like Johnny Mnemonic as well. Udo Kier is probably the most known to us on the West side because he does a lot of stuff in the U.S. He played Larry. We'll see him again in 1991's My Own Private Idaho, but he got to start with doing stuff like in the U.S. he got to start doing stuff like Blood for Dracula and Flesh for Frankenstein. He's been in Suspiria, as well as Barbed Wire and a whole bunch of other stuff. We'll talk about him later. But I don't have a whole lot of cast and crew notes because a lot of these people were in primarily European movies that I don't recognize. So I don't know how notable they are. One person I will mention is Colonel Harris, was played by Eddie Constantine. Personally, I did not think that his performance in this was very good at all. I thought he was probably the worst actor of them all.
Like his voice, I don't know if this was like on purpose, but it sounded as if like he was talking dubbed.
I think everybody was. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. I think all of the audio was post.
Okay.
I think everybody's
But his was
dialogue,
like the most.
His was probably
it was
some of the most
confusing me. I was like, is he dubbed in English?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think all of the dialogue and all of the sound effects and everything were done in post-production.
Okay.
That's what it seemed like to me. This movie had a very classic 30s, 40s vibe throughout the entire production, and the sound quality is part of that. But yeah, Eddie Constantine, he was born in America, but he spent a lot of his time in Europe. He did a lot of movies where he played this sort of character. He also did a lot of movies where he played a specific character name called Lemmy Caution, starting as early as 1953 in a movie called Poison Ivy, probably most notably in the movie Alphaville. But he's played that exact same character, Lemmy Caution, in stuff like movies called Macaroni Blues, Springtime in Vienna, and also another 1991 movie that I cannot find available for U.S. consumption called Germany Year 9090, directed by Jean-Luc Godard. So, if that becomes available, we'll watch it at some point. We'll see Eddie Constantine again as his signature character, Lemmy Caution. In terms of awards, focusing only on the Cannes Film Festival, it won several. It won the Best Artistic Contribution Prize, which I don't know if that's done every single year or not. It won the Jury Prize, which it was tied with Out of Life or La Vie. And it also won the Technical Grand Prize, which certainly makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It was nominated for the Palme d'Or. There's 19 films nominated in total, but Barton Fink, which we've already talked about, that won.
Right. And
famously, Lars von Trier walked out and gave everyone the finger as he lost that prize.
I don't know, whatever.
Which do you think is better, Barton Fink or...
I like Barton Fink.
Okay.
I don't know, which do you? I mean, visually, this is, like, I can understand why he got mad, because he probably...
There's some similar thematic elements to both of these. They're very, I don't know, similar in tone as well, I would say. Similar in terms of, like, progression and escalation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because everything escalate. Both movies, everything just... I guess it is. They're both a slow build, and everything escalates to that last 20 minutes.
Yeah. But there's more happening in this from scene to scene than there was in Barton Fink. Yeah, it's a tough one. I don't know. We'll talk about rankings and ratings in a bit, but I don't know. Depending on the day, I could go either way with it. I think today I'm probably going to say that this is slightly better, mostly just because of the visuals. On to true crime and pop culture.
Every time I look up a movie and then I find stuff out about, like, an actor or the director, there's controversy surrounding Lars von Trier with sexual harassment.
Okay.
And I was like, can we please not?
Can there be
like, can people do better?
Person? Yeah, the only thing I saw was that he left his first wife for his second wife. I think he left his first wife for, like, the babysitter, basically.
Mm-hmm. But I briefly saw that Bjork complained about, or filed, like, a sexual harassment suit against him while working on Dancer in the Dark. And it sounded as if he was saying she was the one that was, quote, calling all the shots or whatever.
Okay.
And I didn't delve into it because I was like, not again.
Yeah.
Because I was like, every time I watch a movie, someone has done something shitty to mostly a woman.
Also is the man in power, of course, yeah.
So I saw it on... I just saw it briefly on Wikipedia, and I was like, oh, okay. Well, I'm not going to really talk... I'm not going to delve into, like, his controversies. Because
just know that they're there if you want to.
But yeah, know that they're there. And when I saw that, I just rolled my eyes. I was like, not again. Can people do better, please? So I'm going to move on to, like, TV that was going on. Because this movie was released on May 12th, 1991, which was a Sunday on ABC. At 7 p.m. was the show called World of Discovery, which is just, you know, a nature show. It was about crocodiles. After that was America's Funniest Home Videos.
I've heard of it.
Probably watching it. After that was America's Funniest People.
Yes. With
Dave Coulier
and Tawny Katane.
They did both.
She wasn't always the co-host. It morphed at some point. But
yeah. On CBS was 60 Minutes, and then after that was Murder, She Wrote. On Fox was a TV, starting at 7 p.m., was a TV show called True Colors. Have you heard of this show?
No. I know the movie by that name. I think there's a 1991 movie, right? True Colors?
I think so. So this is a sitcom that it lasted 2 seasons. It stars Frankie Faison. Do you know who he is?
Mm-hmm.
Playing a Ronald Freeman, who is a widowed African-American dentist in Baltimore, who marries Ellen Davis, played by Stephanie Faraci. That doesn't
sound familiar.
She's like a character actress. Like, if I show you a picture of her, you will know who she is.
I just don't know her name.
She has been in like almost every like comedy in the 70s, 80s.
Okay.
All the way up to now. She was like in Hocus Pocus. She was in Sideways. She was in Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates. Like, she's just like in a million. Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be a fun life to just be like a character actor and just do like little bit roles.
Yeah.
On like a million things.
So Ronald Freeman, a widowed African-American dentist in Baltimore, who marries Ellen Davis, a divorced white kindergarten teacher who was one of his patients. Ron has 2 sons, a 17-year-old named Terry, played by someone named Claude Brooks. I couldn't find much about him. And then a 14-year-old son named Lester, but played by someone by the name of Adam Jeffries, which I couldn't find too much, but he was in the movie Ghost Dad.
Okay.
And very little other stuff. But he did win a Young Artist Award for this show.
Yeah, I don't recognize it. I mean, I watched a decent amount of Fox back then.
And then, Ellen has a teenage daughter, so it's about a blended family. It lasted for 2 seasons, but in the second season, so in the first season, Frankie Faison plays the lead character, but he was replaced by Cleavon Little.
Yeah.
You know who he is?
From Blazing Saddles.
Yeah. He played the lead character in the second season.
Huh.
But it didn't say why or what happened.
I don't know
why
much
he was
about
replaced.
I have a feeling it's because I've heard rumors that Frankie Faison is very difficult.
Oh, to work with?
Yeah. So maybe it has something to do with that.
And I don't know if this is the reason why the show was canceled, but Cleavon Little died in 1992, like during the filming of it, or maybe right after the second season filmed.
You'd think it'd almost be like reverse, where like he gets replaced because he died, and then they bring in Frankie
and maybe
Faison.
I mean, but, I don't know if it was canceled before that, or after, and they were like, we don't want to find a third replacement.
Yeah.
So that was on Fox, 7 p.m. After that, Parker Lewis Can't Lose.
I know that one. Have a DVD of it.
Definitely watching that, or watched that. After that was In Living Color.
Yeah.
Fox was on fire.
Even like the later years, I watched that.
Oh, yeah. After that was a show that I forgot about, and I was like, oh my god. But the show Get a Life. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I never really watched it, though. I have copies of the DVDs.
Oh, really?
But never took the time to watch them. I know it's like a cult favorite.
Yeah, it was, this lasted 2 seasons, too. Mm-hmm. So it was, Chris Elliott, who plays a 30-year-old paper boy. He still lives with his parents.
Yeah. And it has the R.E.M. Stand as the theme song.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cult classic for anyone who's interested. I think like Rhino or somebody does it. So distributes it, so it's probably on like Tubi or
oh, okay,
one of those more free services, or Pluto or something.
So the writers for that show were Charlie Kaufman and Bob Odenkirk.
Oh, interesting.
So
wasn't really aware that Charlie Kaufman did like sitcom work.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. I was like, oh, interesting. Yeah. And then the creators were Adam Resnick, who was a writer for David Letterman, and then writer-director David Merkin, who was, he was a producer for Newhart and then The Simpsons. So yeah, you got those people writing that show. After that was Married with Children.
Was not allowed to watch it.
That's interesting. So after Married with Children was a spin-off of Married with Children, and I didn't know there were spin-offs, but I guess there were 3 spin-offs of Married with Children.
Okay.
And this show called Top of the Heap, which I've never even heard of, but it had 2 lesser known characters. I sort of remember some people from Married with Children, but I don't remember these people. So it had 2 minor characters from Married with Children, one of them being Matt LeBlanc.
Okay.
So it's a father.
Does that mean Matt LeBlanc was in Married with Children?
I suppose so.
Okay.
I don't know what these people were in relation to the family, like
right.
the Bundys, I guess. Because I don't remember these guys at all. But every once in a while, like Ed O'Neill and Christina Applegate and then David Faustino, those were the only 3 people that would guest star on this show.
Okay.
And it only lasted it was 1 season, but 6 episodes. And this episode that was on this night was the 5th episode. Okay. So next week, it would have been canceled or done with.
The penultimate of the Heap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
and
I don't know that one.
Yeah. After that was a sketch comedy, or not really a sketch comedy, but a stand-up show called The Sunday Comics. Have you heard of this?
Isn't it? Yeah, it's just...
It was like a variety.
It's basically... Is it just stand-up?
Yeah, but every week was a different person, and then from what I've seen, a different host.
But it's like one host with like 3 or 4 different stand-ups within like an hour or something like that.
Yeah.
Or a half hour.
I tried to look it up on YouTube. There were a couple episodes, but not this one. But I did find one that was in January that had Weird Al in it.
Okay. Maybe we'll find a January Sunday movie that we can watch.
Or maybe somewhere that was close to that release date.
Or one of these movies that doesn't have a definitive release date. We'll have to figure out what to do with.
And I looked up the Hot 100 charting for that week for Billboard Top 100. And this is from May 12th to May 18th, 1991. I'm just going to do, I guess, the top 5, but also talk about some other random ones that popped up.
Okay.
So the top 5 for that week. Number 1 was High Fives, I Like the Way, the kissing game.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, which I'm gonna want to do another mini episode about, was Kathy Dennis, the song Touch Me, All Night Long.
Uh-huh.
Number 3 is CC Music Factory, Here We Go, which that song.
That's one you'll know if you hear it.
See, now I don't know a song
I don't know
that
how it goes off the top of my head, but like, all of CNC Music Factory's
okay.
hits. You just don't know.
It was like, Here We Go. All right. And number 4 was the Divinals, I Touch Myself. And then number 5 was Rod Stewart's Rhythm of My Heart.
Okay.
Which, I don't know, that was played a lot.
I don't like Rod Stewart.
In the grocery store from 1996 to 2001. I don't know. This was for the past 20 weeks. So it was Whitney Houston's The Star-Spangled Banner, which is probably the best song version of the Star-Spangled Banner that I've heard. I don't know who's done better than Whitney Houston's version.
It surprises me that.
But that was on the radio, I guess.
Yeah, like, is this sales? Like, was it released for sale?
Like a single, I'm assuming. But I don't know if I've heard it
Maybe it's like a charity thing.
on the radio.
No,
but it was number 98.
Yeah, I don't think I would have ever heard it on the radio.
It was on the chart for 20 weeks.
Yeah, it's like, you know how everyone talks about Prince's Super Bowl halftime show now? Like, but everyone was talking about like the Whitney Houston Star Spangled Banner for a long time as well back then. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I agree with you. Like, it's possibly the best rendition of the anthem that's ever been done, but it's weird that it's charting and for so many weeks.
Right. And then another thing that popped out was the Rembrandts, Just the Way It Is Baby, because I did not know that was the Rembrandts, because I thought the Rembrandts only did one song, and that was I'll Be There For You.
So we have two pre-Friends friends references
this week.
Yes.
And yeah, I know that song because, once again, working in a grocery store from 1996 to from the late 90s to the early 2000s was all easy listening music.
Yeah. So then on to rankings and ratings. So on your 1 to 5 star scale, where are you going to put Europa / Zentropa?
I think I'm going to give this a 4, but I liked Barton Fink more.
Okay. I'm going to go sort of opposite of you. I think I do like this one more, just from the visual standpoint. I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 4 on my star scale. I think I gave Barton Fink a 3.
Okay. Well, I think you did also do 3.5 because I convinced you to raise it a half a star.
Maybe.
So they both have 3.5.
All right. Well, if that's the case.
Or you raised it from 2.5 to 3.
Yeah, that might have been. I do remember you helped me bump it up, but yeah, this is a 3.5. I think if there was more story depth to it, but yeah, it was hypnotic, but basically just because it was just amazing to watch, not so much the plot stuff. So every movie is worth watching once. Would you watch it again?
Not like voluntarily. I don't know. Like with Barton Fink, I wish I knew about that movie. I knew about it, but I wish I knew that I should have watched it when I was a teen, because that's the type of movie I would have watched over and over and over again just to like figure it out. This movie,
there's less to figure out.
Yeah, there's less to figure out, but I would watch like a Criterion, commentary to know like exactly what Lars von Trier was using the color for.
Yeah,
if he that does explain exist. That.
Yeah, I don't know if he explains it, but there is a Criterion edition with Lars von Trier commentary, so that does exist. And I would agree. I would say I'd probably watch it with either with some sort of film discussion afterwards, or as part of the viewing. I would probably watch it that way. But if you out there want to watch Europa as of this recording in July 2021, it's available on HBO Max, Criterion Channel, Canopy, VHS, or DVD. As always, check your local listings. As for us, you can listen to us on all of your major podcasting platforms. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and tell your friends. It really does help us out a lot. You can email us at 1991movierewind@gmail.com. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Letterboxd. Just search 1991 Movie Rewind. Or go to 1991movierewind.com for the full list of movies, along with show notes and more. Next week, we're going to watch The Pit and the Pendulum, which is available on Tubi, Pluto TV, Digital Rental, VHS, and DVD. We will see you then.
Thanks.